All right, we're recording now. That's important because several folks aren't able to come. But want to answer your all's questions about the week, and then also give you all some background on what this program is about. And as you all know, we do these week-long programs, about 12 times a year. And this one is rather special because, and that's why we call it the Collegiate program, is we've modeled this program after the field school. As Steve has written you all, it's not a substitute for the field school. The field school is an intensive 6 week process that folks go through, and to be accredited as a field school with the universities, it has to be that long because of the amount of material we cover. But we're going to touch on so much of that material, and part of getting the most out of the week is doing the 2 to 3 day asynchronous portion. And I'm going to send you all a link to that, the syllabus for that, after this call. But that gives you some background readings on everything from stratigraphy to artifacts to our community-based archaeology that we do here at Montpelier, and how that fits into the larger framework of community archaeology as defined by archaeologists, and gives you a context for understanding what you all are going to be doing over the week. And for the week-long program, you're going to be working side by side with us, the archaeology staff here at Montpelier, at a site that we're really excited about. And I'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to be working at a late 18th century blacksmith shop, and likely finishing a few units at homes for enslaved families that we've been excavating this year. And so you're going to see going to get exposure to survey, potentially to drawing profiles and plan views, finishing up some units. So there'll be a lot that, that expeditioners usually don't get to see. So, and that's where, giving you kind of the deep dive into archaeology. But before I go any further, does anybody have any questions about the week? Anything that you've been dying to know about, or logistics, like what airport to fly into, which is either Charlottesville or Richmond. Um, Also, transportation. It's really, we've talked with a couple of y'all about this, is it's really recommended that you have a vehicle. Montpelier is not, far from other areas like the town of Orange, but it's not something you can really readily walk to areas. And if you don't have a car, you should get to know your fellow expeditioners to get rides. But if you're staying, in town, it's impossible to get to the site. So it's like, just for simplicity, it's best to have a car. And if you have any questions about that, let us know. But it's something you need to address now rather than when you arrive. The other thing is that we're still in summer. It's going to be August, is a pretty hot time of year, so you should be prepared for that. We're at a beautiful site, but there are bugs, there are ticks, there's other things you need to be cautious about, and have clothing that allows you to be covered and to wear tick spray, that sort of thing. So looking at the things to bring on the expedition is really important. The items to bring. But is there any questions you all have before we get started?
Um,
Yeah, Alicia,
uh,
go ahead.
is there anything in particular that you'll want to find on this expedition, or is it just for fun? Well, I mean, I
Well,
know it's for fun, but is
yeah,
there anything in particular?
I will definitely, I'll get into that in a second, but definitely there are objectives for this expedition, are to finish up the work that we have been working on this summer at Walnut Hollow, which is a early 19th century site for home for enslaved families, and then start up on the surveys and excavations at the late 18th century blacksmith shop that was
Ooh.
where the temple is today. And so, yeah, these expeditions are part of our research mission that we have at Montpelier. So this isn't just a site that we've set up for expeditioners to dig at. It is, but it's part of a research program that we involve you in, And basically, when you come in these programs, you're part of the archaeology team. You're treated as part of the team. You're given instructions on how to do excavations, how to do screening, everything that we do because you're part of this research process. So these are real sites that you're working on and you're getting, essentially real life experience as an archaeologist. And that's why for a lot of people, they really appreciate these programs because it gives them a taste of what a career in archaeology is like. So it's not staged. This is not, a canned site. This is one that has never been touched before. And we're working closely with the descendant community on the work we're doing and going to introduce you to all these processes. So that's a really good question, Lisa. Alicia, really appreciate it.
Matt, I think another thing that's great about that is because you're working side by side with our archaeology team, if you have questions about a career in archaeology, you will
Hmm.
be working right next to an archaeologist the entire time you're here. And they're more than willing to have those conversations and answer those questions about, what it's like to be an archaeologist, what it's like to come out and work at the site every day. And, they may have ideas for advice for professional paths as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. That's asking questions is a major part of these programs.
Hello, this is Raleigh. I'm going to be staying at Constitution Village. I was wondering if the meals are provided or what to expect for meals.
Meals are you're on your own. We have the Sunday night welcome dinner, and then everything else you provide, and that's in an effort to keep costs down and for efficiency. We don't have the staffing to provide meals, and if we did that, these expeditions would cost at the level of like five or six or $7,000 just because of everything that's needed for that. We used to do that with Earthwatch. This is like 20 years ago, and that was an absolute nightmare. So, yeah, be glad that we're not providing your meals. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, but it's good. Thank you, Raleigh. It's good to be prepared. There's a lot of folks that arrive. They'll bring food, but there's also food in Virginia. You can get food in Orange. So, Eleanor, you're from Orange. You can testify to that as well.
So in the itinerary, it says, break for lunch and break for, how are we going to have time to leave the site and run into town and get something to eat and run back all within 30 minutes?
Oh, great question, Regina. You won't because you'll pack your lunch, and you want to bring a cooler, like a small, like igloo cooler, and that's what we do. That's what the staff exactly does, and what's what
So bring
expeditioners have
cold
been
cuts
doing.
and bread
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
chips.
Cold cuts and bread, crackers and cheese, fruit, whatever you
Mhm.
want. So, but have that at the site. And we start the day about 8 o'clock, and so you'll have time to do your breakfast, but it means, an early morning routine for you all. We used to start at 7:30 and we got a lot of kickback on that. So we moved it up to 8. So
Okay.
and
And
then
the
yeah, go
places
ahead.
offer microwaves, and do we bring cups and plates and cutlery, or is all of that provided? We just bring the food?
Um, for Sunday,
No, for the rest of the week. Like, how do we make breakfast? Are there pots and pans and dishes on the premises, or do we need to bring our own
yeah,
cookware?
if you're staying in the village, there are pots and pans there, and at Arlington House as well. Yeah, so
Okay,
there
so I can
there are
boil soup and
dishes.
make
Yeah,
toast, things like that.
you
Okay,
can
yeah.
make toast. There's a full kitchen in House 8, and that's why we
Okay,
have you all in House 8. Absolutely, or at Arlington. So as we've talked about.
okay.
So.
And then how far are any of the accommodations from the actual place where we'll be excavating? Do we have
There
to drive
you'll
to
have
be
to
prepared?
drive. Be prepared to drive. They're about a 30 to 40 minute walk if you know where you're going. And it could be a 2 hour walk if you're lost. So yeah. So driving is what's recommended. So, and Regina, if you have any questions about this, we can talk offline.
Yeah, no, I rented a car and I can fit five, so I volunteer. Four people can
Oh,
ride with me.
Oh, thank you, Regina. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. Really appreciate you. So that's really
Okay.
nice.
So they can reach out to you if they don't have my direct contact info, and we can make arrangements. So for the week, since I'm driving up from Richmond, I'm not coming in from the airport, so I can't pick
Yeah.
anyone up from the airport. But once they get to the premises, and if we need to go into town for dinner in the evenings, because I'm sure no one's going to want a sandwich for dinner after having a sandwich for lunch.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, thank you, Regina. Yeah, the email that I've sent, and the one I'll send after this has everybody's email, and it's
okay.
exactly for that, so you all can communicate. Because this is one of the really nice things about these programs is, folks that come in these programs, they've made friends for life. I mean, this is a week-long experience where you're immersed together in, you know, a set of experiences that you'll remember forever. And
Mhm.
these kind of things bond people. So it's really beautiful. So thank you, Regina.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, Steve, can you think of anything else to add before we get into the power of place? Oh, you're muted, Steve.
Sorry about that. That if anyone has questions, just feel free to email Dig. We're always available, and if it's easier to call, my number's listed there. I think your number's listed there, and
Hmm.
just hop on the phone, and we're willing to discuss situations and scenarios and provide whatever information you need.
Yeah, and just so you all know, for this program, I am not going to be on site until Tuesday night because I've got a family event that I'm going to be at up in the Adirondacks. So Steve is going to
Lake
be
Placid,
around there. Yeah, just if you know
Lake
Lake
George,
Placid,
Beaver Lake,
this is Mineville, Port Henry on Lake Champlain.
Lake Champlain.
Yeah,
I visited
yeah.
there.
So
Yeah.
I know it's great. I'll bring a little. Hopefully, I'll bring some of that weather back, Regina, when I arrive on
Okay.
Tuesday.
I've been on the Vermont side of Lake Champlain and stood there and looked across at New York State. And I'm like, wow, I'm
Yeah,
really happy in
that's
Vermont. Of
beautiful. I plan on being on Lake Champlain that week. So, but Steve will
course.
be the local contact, and especially
Okay.
for Sunday arrival. I think Steve, you're going to be there for the dinner. Yeah,
Yes.
awesome. I'll be picking up at Cooper's, and
Yep.
so. But well, yeah, yeah. So for the early part, can contact Steve, and then once I get back, we can reconnoiter. But what I wanted to start with and discuss is what the title of this discussion is power of place, and that's going to be a huge theme for the week at Montpelier. Is what historic sites like Montpelier represent in terms of people's experience, and this gets into the term power of place. And we always love to hear what your all's response to that term is and what it makes you all think of when I say the term power of place. And wanted to open up the floor to what this brings to mind for you all. And there's no right answer.
Oh,
There's no right answer. There's no one answer. There's many answers. So, and like so many of the tours we're going to be doing, this is designed to inspire discussion.
I like to dwell on the utter hypocrisy of the founding fathers. The
Now,
utter hypocrisy to write the Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence while owning people.
and how does that
So,
relate to a place like Montpelier?
yeah, well, James Madison was one of the authors of the Declaration, and I think he wrote the Bill of Rights by himself. I can't recall. So freedom for me, but not for thee.
Yeah,
So I don't want to say enthralled because that's the wrong word, but it's very sacred to me to be able to work on uncovering, hopefully, artifacts, but remembering the people who toiled there so that he could live in the lap of luxury while he granted freedom to others.
it
So
looked like
to me,
yes.
there's power in resurrecting those who made it possible for him to mm, underfound democracy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something that we have as a goal at our institution, which is to, while there is that library where he wrote the Virginia plan, when he
Mhm.
was looking out that window, he was looking at fields where he was looking at the backs of Black Americans who were providing the wealth that allowed him to do that. And like you said, Virginia, create a document and a set of self-government that was for people that looked like him and
Mhm.
looking like him in skin color and gender and in wealth. And so yeah, there's the power of place there is just in that is there is it was Montpelier was 95% Black Americans enslaved and
Mm.
5% you know not even 5% individuals that would be able to be considered citizens. It was probably
Even the women,
1%, even though,
wealthy
yeah,
white
the
women,
women. Yeah, especially the
since they
women.
had
Yeah, yeah,
rights. So it was a very, very small percentage. But to me, the real power was in the ones who made it possible. You know, if they ever decided to quit and said, I'd rather, be dead than continue to work for you, there'd be no American economy. There'd be no America if we hadn't worked for free.
yeah,
Because they held
absolutely.
the power and didn't realize it till centuries later. So yeah, that's what power of place means to me. Everyone's going to have a different relation to the plantation. I don't call it an estate; it was a plantation.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is definitely the case. Is that, and this is one thing that we really focus on that relationship between power of place and your individual experience. And
Mhm.
meeting people where they're at, when they're at Montpelier and giving people the space the space and the grace to be able to begin to bring themselves into that arena and into the how we're doing placemaking is through archaeology, which bears witness to the enslaved who built
Mhm.
Montpelier, who built the country. And yeah, there's so many ways that you could look at power of place. It's from the past, it's from the present. Anyone else want to add to this?
Mm,
Yeah,
Well,
Alicia.
well, I
Okay.
guess power of place for me is about the perspective. If I mean, well, back in early colonial times, well, things were different than from how they are now. Oh,
Mhm.
so well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that not all sides of the story may have been written or recorded at the time of the era that we're researching. So as archaeologists, we might need to blend those perspectives together to get a more complete picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the written perspective does not provide all the story. And you can't just look at one side in presenting that story. And that's what we call, like what you just referenced, is whole truth history. And that provides really so much of a richer understanding of what happened in the past. And like what you're alluding to, Alicia, is that times were different. People's values were different. People's experience was different. What they had access to in terms of information was very different. Resources, it would have been essentially beyond even going to a different country, for us today. It would have been a completely different reality in terms of just the what anthropologists call culture shock. You wouldn't even be able to fathom if you had, I'm not going to call it the opportunity because I don't think it would be an opportunity, but had the for some reason were sent
Experience.
back in time.
Yeah.
Hmm?
The experience of being sent back into that era to experience the horrors. Yeah. We
That's
couldn't handle it.
Yeah, it's terrifying to think about. I mean, it's the more you learn about it, the less of an opportunity it becomes. So, but yeah, they're very different. And so, power of place, it goes beyond individuals' perspectives and also
I'm
includes
not in.
time. Hmm?
Well, I think power of place is a very interesting concept because I feel like, as you were saying before, like an interesting issue in archaeology is that we apply our own perspectives, like
Mhm.
based on
Hmm.
our
That's
own,
true.
like based on our own societies, and we sometimes unintentionally put that onto the civilizations, the societies that
Hmm.
we're trying to learn about.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like, and I see this especially in like the Viking age, where we're like, no, women weren't Vikings, but then you
What?
uncover a skeleton where
Hmm.
that where a woman was like an honored Viking. So I think
Yeah.
it's really also important to understand that how people lived a long time ago might not necessarily fit our idealized versions.
You're absolutely correct, and that adds so it yeah that adds a level of distance that you need to have as an archaeologist, and to begin to find ways to contextualize the interpretations you're making, and is so powerful. I mean, it's like it goes beyond you know us thinking as scientists that we can understand what was happening. We can begin to approach it, but there's a lot that needs to be brought into all this, and that's a lot of this. What I think you're might be referring to, Tess, is like context. There's context
Mhm.
for the sites
Yes.
we're excavating, for the artifacts and the unit. There's
Mhm.
also context for
Mhm.
the interpretations we're making within the cultural space that we're studying. And what this gets to is that we're not just studying artifacts for artifacts' sake. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not what we're about. We're trying to
Mhm.
understand the people who produced those sites, who lived and worked at those sites. And that's where the real power is. And that's where
Mhm.
when you're working with, and what we're able to do, and we're very fortunate to do, is working with descendants of
Mhm.
the ancestors who produced these sites and worked at these sites, brings a whole another level of explanation, of power, of place, of contextualizing, and also understanding what are important issues to be looking at. And so this is where what we're working on for the next probably 5 to 10 years, if not for longer, and definitely for longer, is looking at the what we're referring to is the archaeology of Black expertise, because it's in the landscape, and we're starting with the blacksmith shops, as because with the discussions with the MDC, these are sites that they have an intense interest in with their ancestral connection. And they
Mhm.
provide an extremely tangible way to begin to understand and demonstrate Black expertise, and put it into a form that visitors can understand. Because that's one really important critical thing to understand with the work we're doing with the MDC, is members of the MDC who have an affiliation with Montpelier also have an affiliation with a lot of other sites across the country. This isn't the only site their ancestors were enslaved at, but they've chosen to work with Montpelier because of the work that we're doing to present their ancestors' lives. And that's something that another contextualizing factor, and another aspect that goes into power of place, that is oftentimes it's central to everything we do, and it makes
As
it.
you know what I call it, and you made an excellent point. I like to think of it as decolonizing
Mhm.
archaeology, because when you
Yes.
Yes,
think about
thank you.
where archaeology as a science.
Are you locked up, Regina? Hey, Regina, I think your bandwidth. All right, Regina, unfortunately is frozen. We'll get back to Regina.
Oh.
So, well, what I wanted to do at this point was to start to share screens, and uh, and Steve, maybe you could text Regina and just let her know. That'd be great. That she's locked up. But what I wanted to do was to share screens and give some context for the sites we're going to be working on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit share screen and go screen two. And what you all should see is a map of Virginia. And where you'll are probably familiar with it with Virginia, and where Montpelier is in Orange County, right here. So DC is up in this
Oh,
area.
hey, I'm so upset. Can you
Oh, hey
see me?
Regina, we can hear you. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. What she explained was that the word haram, which, if anyone knows anything about Islam, means permissible. So there's certain food impermissible, and there's food you can eat that's halal, and then haram is forbidden, right? But the word harim means valued and esteemed and um, protected. So when they saw women of the past, of ancient history, they assumed that those women were kept in harems instead of harams. Those women were never concubines in ancient Arabia and Mesopotamia and Babylon. They were queens. And she
Mm,
had covered tablets to show their budgets. They had servants. They were responsible for portions of the kingdom. They had power. They so the mm, colonizers who founded anthropology and archaeology went in and assigned those women as prostitutes and
mm,
concubines. That's colonizing anthropology and archaeology.
Hmm.
Nothing could be further from the truth. They were esteemed and valued parts of the kingdom. So
That's right.
often, what we know of anthropology and archaeology is through the lens of Europeans who came up with their
Mhm.
own concepts, like you said, Tess, their own ideas of what things should be. I think,
Exactly.
yeah.
yeah, and decolonizing is a huge part of what we're looking at, and also decentering that narrative that it only that centers the say
Eurocentric.
the
Mm-hmm.
Eurocentric and the owners of capital, as you will, like Madison owners. It's
Mm-hmm.
you're losing a whole nother side of the equation, and this is where the site we're working on at Montpelier, we're located in Central Orange, Central Northern Virginia, in Orange County, and what this map shows is the area that the MDC is looking at for this arc of communities for the range of interaction the enslaved had, and so you've got Monticello down here, you've got Montpelier up here. In the times before clearing of the land by enslaved Africans, this was the land of the Manahoac and the Monacan, and the
Yeah.
Monacan Nation was down closer to Charlottesville and to Monticello. The Manahoac were up where we are, which is the watershed that leads into the Rappahannock River, the Rapidan River through here, and then the Rappahannock further to the east. And for Montpelier, what is Montpelier today is this area, this brown line, and everybody can see my screen here.
Mm-hmm.
The brown line is what denotes Montpelier today. This is the 2,650 acres owned by Montpelier, or
Mm.
I'm sorry, owned by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And within this, we have about five different plantation landscapes and ownerships from different families that form Montpelier, what is Montpelier today. The Madison portion is this area right here. This is the original core, and you can see this land pattern right here. This is the boundaries of the land as sold by
Wow.
Dolly Madison in 1844. And when she sold the property in 1844, she also sold all of the enslaved community. And
Oh.
so this core portion was lost in 1844. And more importantly, this is when the community was divided and sold into the Deep South. And so we lost an incredible amount of resources with oral histories and memories with the sale of the community and the land at that time.
Was that to pay off her son's gambling debts? Didn't he like bankrupt the family?
Well, it's that and decisions that she and James Madison made for the lifestyle they held. I mean, John Payne Todd, the stepson of James Madison, he was the son of Dolly's in a previous marriage. He certainly didn't help the economic situation with his gambling, and but in the decisions that Jolly and James made, especially in their retirement years, they took money on credit with basically the credit being what it was used was the people they enslaved. And so that the people that were the community at Montpelier was used as the guarantee for those loans. And in the 1840s, when after James Madison had died, these debts were called in, and that's when Dolly and her stepson John Payne Todd began selling off the community. And Madison starts selling off community members in the 1830s when he's nearing his death in 1836. So the community that makes up Montpelier today, literally the landscape is made up of 5 different plantations that were in the area, and with the Madison land being about 3/4 of the land. And today, when you start looking at Montpelier as a visitor space, when you zoom in here, this is where the main house is. So the main house right here is as it looks today, with the restored 1820 main house. The visitor center is just downslope of where the house is, and then you have the visitor parking lots here. So when most people visit Montpelier, they'll come in on Route 20 right here and then come down center field. And most of what they see is the visitor center and the main house. But there would have been about 5,000 contiguous acres that made up Montpelier. And at the height of operation, over 120 enslaved individuals that lived and worked at Montpelier. So it's that community and that landscape that we're looking at as a department. And what we're focused on is the area of the historic core, or what's called the visitor core, that most people see. Because today, when you look at this space, for example, here's a shot from above what we call the home farm, which is the fields that are just below the visitor center right here. You can see the main house in the background, and then further still, you see the temple up here. This is all part of a landscape that, even though it's a very tiny fraction of Montpelier's 2,700 acres, is pretty vast when you consider what most people are focused on, which is the main house and the visitor center. All this area in here, and you'll go on tours of this when you're here, this is the home farm that consisted of about 35 acres of the working farm during the Madison era, during the early 19th century. And we've done extensive excavations and surveys across this landscape to understand what was here, from the overseer's house to the homes for enslaved artisans, most likely the blacksmiths who worked at the blacksmith shop here, and then another blacksmith shop downslope. And then you had threshing barns, tobacco barns, a stable. You have all this complex life that today is gone. It's not on the landscape. And that's because after Dolly sold the property in 1844, most of these buildings went into disrepair, and by the Civil War had fallen down to the point where they were no longer usable. And fortunately, this land was left alone, in some cases never plowed. And we've got this incredible set of sites that document the experiences and contributions of the enslaved. So if we're going back to the map right here, and this is all a map I'm going to send you all, and you all can explore on your own. This is all part of what we call it's GIS, Geographic Information Systems. And we've embedded in these maps all kinds of information, everything from, like, for example, where the South Yard is. So in the South Yard, this is an area that you'll be getting a tour with Chris Pash when you're here, one of the other archaeologists here. This is an area that we've reconstructed based on the archaeology. So if this is the South Yard as it appears today with this 6 reconstructed buildings. But if you had visited Montpelier back in 2011, this is what you would have seen. The archaeology of the
Oh,
duplexes here, and then we've reconstructed these duplexes based on the archaeology.
Hmm.
And then these other buildings we had outlined, and it was another 5 years before we had the resources to excavate these structures and figure out that they were the smokehouses, not only a kitchen, but potentially the mid 18th century planter's cottage or home that the Madisons, James Madison Sr. and his wife Nellie Conway Madison, were using to raise their family until the main house was built. So there's all this complex history that we've been able to uncover with the archaeology and then present to visitors to allow them to understand the complexity of this landscape. And this is one of the things that differentiates us from a lot of other archaeological sites is we're using the data that we find from the archaeology, not just to write a report, but actually be able to recreate these landscapes to be able to present the complex history that existed in these places and really bring back to allow these spaces to have the power to tell these stories. And that's one of the things we're going to be really interested in hearing your all's feedback on as you all do these tours. The tours that we have you all go on are not meant as a passive experience. For example, when Steve will give you all a tour on Wednesday on a set of Confederate encampments that are in what we call the Northwoods of Montpelier. And at these sites, there's you might think of Confederate encampments, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Steve, but in these encampments, as you might expect during the Civil War, these were not just occupied by Confederate troops. They were occupied by enslaved individuals, by women and families that were here in the wintertime. So there are these complex realities that you don't really understand until you began to really, explore these sites, reconstruct them, and bring out the complexity that existed in these areas. So, in doing the archaeology and telling these stories, we are not trying to simplify these spaces. We're trying to bring them to life. And what that creates is this layers of information that generates more questions than it answers. And it's in these questions that we begin to have a different perspective on, what happened at places like this. And so an example of this is at the temple today. We've got a set of sites that we've been working on that this is this picturesque landscape at Montpelier. And you can see Dennis, our metal detectorist, doing survey here. Here's the temple with a main house in the background, and he's found all these hits. And these are all part of a blacksmith shop that was here in the 18th century. So not only do you have complexity dating to the early 19th century for the period that we've restored the house to, you have preceding generations of enslaved and enslavers, in the case of the Madisons, who arranged the landscape in different ways to meet their needs and what was being asked of them. And in this case, you've got a major 18th century blacksmith shop that not only served the needs of the plantation, but was also during the American Revolution supplying the Continental Army with goods. So you're talking about a major economic infrastructure on an agricultural plantation that people never think of. That producing that this space was producing wagons and plows for the local region and community, and the skills that were involved in that are certainly mirrored by the skills that were involved with folks that were growing the tobacco, the enslaved farmers who were creating the fields out of woods. But in the case of this blacksmith shop, it's so much more tangible to be able to see it because we actually find the results the products of the blacksmith at the site. So this is a small example of some of the items we found at the blacksmith shop that would have either been made, forged, or repaired by enslaved blacksmiths. And with the head blacksmith at Montpelier during this time being a gentleman by the name of Moses, who kept records, who was supervising potentially 3 or 4 forges. And this is something we want to learn more about. And the MDC, the Montpelier Descendant Committee, wants us to really do a deep dive in. And what's interesting about these sites is they also, change through time. So, for example, the site we're going to be working at, you've got a landscape that changes with time. This is one of the signs on the property today that shows the 18th century house in comparison to the early 19th century house. And this is the same building. Like, so these two chimneys that are right here, these two chimneys here, are the two chimneys that are right here. And what do you all notice that's different about this landscape from 1765 versus this landscape, some 50 years later in 1850, 1860?
Recording in progress.
Anybody? Alicia, it looks like you want to say something.
Well, I'm seeing a lot more forestation around on the house.
You're seeing a lot more what, Alicia?
Well, a lot more trees.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, the trees are something that's characteristic of this early 19th century picturesque, where they're trying to create a natural scene around this built landscape. And so that's, the idea of the picturesque is creating a landscape that's worthy of a painting. And so, guided by style books of the time period, the enslaved at Montpelier re-landscape this 18th century landscape into this area where you've got planted trees that run up to the main house. And there's a much better perspective on this that you can see in this image right here, showing the pine alley, the grove, and where the temple was, is today. In the 18th century, that's where this blacksmith shop was. And so
Wow.
when this landscape has changed, this would have involved, literally moving thousands of tons of soil to create this picturesque landscape. And much of this was done at the sacrifice of agricultural and economic production that led to what you were talking about, Regina, with the debt that the Madisons are in. It
This is
comes
why they went broke.
yeah, they essentially went
They
broke.
trying to live that life.
And what Madison's father, was worked with his enslaved blacksmiths to produce a diversified plantation. Madison Jr., the president, got rid of the blacksmith shop that was here and moved that blacksmith shop a half a mile away down into the area what we call the home farm today. And there, what we find, and Corey will give you a tour of this site. What we found at this site was a very different set of blacksmithing materials, more evidence for repairs rather than production. And we actually found two blacksmith shops at the home farm. The one that was up here by the overseer's house, and then one further downslope that, to give you a picture of this, this is what we call the farrier's shop that potentially had a water-powered bellows. The other blacksmith shop being here, visitor center here, and then the main house further back in the woods. So you've got these changes through time that we're interested in looking at. And we've done enough excavations on these other blacksmith shops that when the work that we're going to be doing this summer and fall, we'll have a comparison to really, base what we're finding and put it into context through time. And so we're going to be doing some, really, groundbreaking work this coming August in terms of doing surveys in this area. And one of the things that you're going to be exposed to is the amount of metal detector survey that we've done. You can see in this map right here, this shows metal detector surveys we've conducted over the past year that show where these early 19th century homes of the enslaved are. So these sites right here, especially this one, is where we've opened up a number of units, excavation units, right against the wood line. And we found evidence for homes of families that were living here in the early 19th century and the late 18th century. But in the early 19th century, were living here after the blacksmith shop had been moved to the home farm, about a half a mile away. And then in this heat density map, what this map shows is green is low concentrations of metal items, and then red are high concentration of metal items. And with a metal detector survey, what do you think we're going to be finding at these sites? One being a home, the other being a blacksmith shop. What would show up with a metal detector survey?
Blacksmith.
What?
What was that?
Blacksmith.
Yeah, evidence for the blacksmith shop. And Regina, I think you're getting a little bit of feedback between I think you might have your phone and your the computer on. And maybe, yeah, if you mute one, that does it. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
You're
So
still-
no problem. And then for the home, what kind of artifacts do you think would be finding with the metal detector survey? What do you hold a house together with?
Pottery, maybe some bricks.
Now none of that has metal in it, so it wouldn't show up with
The nails.
the nails. Yeah, nails
Round
are.
head, square head.
And
Yeah,
what about horseshoes?
horseshoes definitely is another one, especially at the blacksmith shop. We find a lot of horseshoe nails because, as you all might know, one of the main activities that would occur at these blacksmith shops involves horses and the equestrian trade. So, basically everything was horsepower back in the day, everything from what would be ridden, what would be pulling the plows, any kind of thing you'd use a motor for, like for pulling a stump. It was horses back in the day, and they would be shod with horseshoes. And then, so with these metal detector surveys, what they allow us to do is to quickly assess an area for where sites are. And so this coming in the next couple of weeks, you'll be doing shovel test pits across this space to define the stratigraphy that's in the area where we have all these blacksmith items, especially the clipped iron and horseshoe nails and other tools that we found associated with the blacksmith shop. So, within this landscape, and does anybody have any questions about this, like the blacksmith shop or anything else to add?
I have a kind of general question, and I know that I've spent the last like maybe 7 months uncovering, I think I mentioned it to you, the remains of an old Black tuberculosis hospital here in Richmond. And one of the things that we were cautioned about was taking pictures and putting them on social media because it was very sensitive issue. Some of their descendants were still living, and to say, "Oh, I found the such and such," it became a matter of keeping trauma at bay.
Mhm.
We are going to be excavating very sensitive sites. Is there no picture taking allowed for our own memories? Or would you say take pictures, but please don't put this on social media? The descendants of these people are still alive, and it wouldn't be nice for them to open up Facebook and see something that belonged to their great grandfather.
Yeah, for that, we've had a lot of discussions with the MDC, the Montpelier Descendants Committee, about this.
Mhm.
And when we were working at the burial ground last year, we turned off the metal detector survey. We did not allow, the MDC did
Good.
not want photography in this space because
Mhm.
they were, and we'll talk about this when you all are here. Their MDC is in the process of developing a memorial to their ancestors in this space, and they did not want to have it misrepresented. What this space, even though we were not excavating any burials, they did not want the space
Sacred space.
misrepresented and keep it as a sacred space.
Mhm.
Over in the area where the blacksmith's site is, this is a site of trauma, similarly, but it's
Mhm.
also a site of expertise, of achievement, of
Okay.
building the nation. And this is something that, in discussions with the MDC, they're comfortable with a tasteful presentation of this on social media. And this is something we talk about when y'all get here, is being respectful and I love what you just said, is treating this as a sacred space. And the discussions we've had with the MDC about how they want memorialization to happen is they want memorialization to happen not just at the site where their ancestors are buried, but all 2,650 acres is a memorial to the achievements and the accomplishments of their ancestors. And today, those achievements, like for example, there you don't think about at a plantation the expertise of blacksmiths and what they would have contributed to the economy, what they would have contributed to the material culture world of not just hardware that was in the main house, but for the region, and developing plows, developing threshing machines. And we're looking for all this. We're not, this goes beyond just a craft industry and creating decorative items, which would have been art items to be celebrated as well. But these are part of the economic engine, as you alluded to, Regina, the economic basis for our country. And how we document this is through the archaeology. The archaeology hasn't been selectively weeded for information that could take away from a certain way that founding fathers would want to present themselves. It was fortunately seen as just an area of waste that would never be looked at. And what we often wonder about is if some of these founding fathers knew how archaeologists are approaching the landscape today, would they have left this space unaltered? What would, or would there have been a justification of cleaning these areas, cleaning them up, as I put into air quotes? So, this is, all something that we're, is a question that we're constantly asking about, is like, this is where our consultation with the MDC is so important. Every week I have a meeting with the chair of the memorialization committee, and we talk about what we're doing. And there are sometimes that Henry Anglin will say, full stop, I need to bring this to the board and have a discussion. And so, and we have an informal advisory group as well, made up of descendants from across the country that also, we're having a meeting on Tuesday coming up to talk about the upcoming field season. So this is,
We should be very careful taking pictures and check with you. Is it okay if I post this to my personal private page to show my family what I've been doing?
yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's, taking pictures is allowed. Taking pictures of artifacts of the site is absolutely fine and sanctioned by the MDC. So yeah.
Okay.
But well, we are at 12:54, and what I wanted to do was to, save times for additional questions that you all might have. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about in this presentation of the landscape is also to mention, some of the post-Madison era history. So the much of the landscape that you see today was preserved because of the next set of owners, especially the DuPonts, who buy the property in 1901. And when they buy the property in 1901, what they do with the landscape is they make it into essentially a country estate or a hobby farm. And so what we've learned with talking with descendants is there are a number of descendants of the enslaved that are still in the area that work for the DuPonts. And today, where we're located is in what's called the old Montpelier Supply Company store. So this is a picture of 1911 of the lab that we use today as the archaeology lab. But we're also have created the community archaeology lab at Montpelier, and that's where the term column comes from. And I'm going to send you all, making a list of items to send you all, is I'm going to send you a article about our new lab and what we're doing with this community space that's right on Route 20. But this DuPont era landscape is one that we're really interested in because of the community connection to today and how this brings in, the local community and their heritage to Montpelier, and there are connections that we're still making with descendants that we don't know we don't know about, after 20, 30 years of doing this. And so this is, in many ways, it's a living landscape that, people alive today have memories going back to the DuPont period. Because remember, DuPont gave the property to the National Trust in 1984, and Montpelier was open to the public, quite recently in 1987. Before that, it was in private hands. And during the DuPont era, the DuPonts employed over 150 individuals. So there was a massive employment area, and there's a number of people in Orange who's either worked for the DuPonts or have ancestors that work for the DuPonts. So there's a lot of interesting stories that continue that remain to be told and to be discovered. So, but yeah, so wanted to wrap things up here and also give you all a chance to ask any additional questions you might have. And I'll send you out additional resources to look at. And again, if there's, I'm also going to send you the syllabus for the virtual week that is the week before, and give you all a chance to begin to go through those materials as well.
Will that be Zoom?
Those are asynchronous, and
so we can take our time and
yeah, you can take your time. So
days.
it just we have a suggested schedule for those that have more tighter schedules, just to see the pacing. But you can begin this virtual course at any time. So
anytime.
And looks like
great.
Alicia, you've already printed that out. So, and we have an updated one that Chris just finished today. So that one, I'm going to be replacing that one with the current one. So yeah, but you've
So for
already
the
gotten
next
it
week
started.
and a half, we can take our time and read it, take notes, be mentally ready. So when we get there Sunday and have a lovely dinner, we can discuss and ask questions.
Absolutely beautiful, Regina. You summed it up very nicely. So,
Okay.
but really excited to have you all arrive at Montpelier. And Steve, will see you all.
Where do we go when we land on Sunday? Which building do we go to? How do we know where to go for dinner and meet up? And
that's in the email that Steve sent, and I'll repeat
Okay.
those directions in the email that I send with a recording of this. So, but
Matt,
that's
and al-
Arlington House.
Matt, and also about a week before, Regina, we will be sending out an email for people to make dinner selections for Sunday
Mhm.
dinner from a restaurant here in Orange called Cooper's. It has a long tradition. People love the food, and we'll be
barbecue?
sending out. It's traditional cooking, local
Yeah,
cuisine,
Okay.
and
local.
so
Yeah, their term is country cooking soul food, and so
Oh, yes.
it
That means
was
barbecue and
yeah
cornbread.
they had
Yes.
barbecue. They're known for their fried chicken, which is absolutely amazing.
yeah.
This comes
Okay.
Well, I like fried chicken.
from the
Yeah.
tradition of
But we know where we're going to eat dinner during the week. We
yeah,
will
they're open during the week
support
as
them.
well. So Eleanor is nodding as well, so she knows Cooper. So thumbs
yeah.
up.
So
Okay.
we'll be sending out a menu for you to make menu selections, and in those emails there will be directions as to how to get to the location of the welcome dinner. And then at the welcome dinner, we will talk about how we're going to have the next stage of Power of Place, which is the initial meeting on Monday morning, which will be at the Calm Lab, and we'll give you directions on how to get there as well. You will
Okay.
always know from us where to go next.
Okay. And pack deep woods off, bug spray,
Absolutely, yeah.
sunscreen. Make
Mhm.
sure you wear a hat. I got a hat that has a mosquito net. So I look like a real anthropologist.
Yeah,
Preferably hiking boots because we'll be in grass and tall grass and
I'd say
comfortable
bring some
with tread.
sneakers, comfortable shoes, and hiking boots. Because on days that you're doing shovel test pits, you will want to have like the hiking boots, like a work
I
boots.
bought an apron, a rubber apron, almost like a blacksmith apron, because you're gonna get dirty when you're doing the sifting of the soil.
Everybody has a different way they want to get dirty. So absolutely, Regina. So
Yes, I'm mentally ready. I just spent 7 months doing this. So I'm like, okay, I think I know what we're gonna do. Portable battery operated fans. If you want to sit and eat your lunch,
sure, yeah.
hand sanitizer so you can clean your hands up before you eat your sandwich. Because we're not going back to any building to eat lunch. We're going to eat lunch on the premise.
You're going to eat lunch at the site. There is a bathroom that has running water, hot water, and
Okay,
so it's
good.
just a walk, and we a walk away, and we also have a gator that we can do a regular run to the bathroom if you don't want to walk that far. So we
But breakfast,
accommodate.
lunch, and dinner will all be provided by the program.
No,
No.
No.
lunch, dinner, and breakfast you provide on your own.
So we
You
have to usually go out to like Orange or
For yeah, or for your lunch, you're going to be bringing that with you in a bring a like an igloo cooler for keeping your lunch during the day, but you'll want to make sandwiches in advance for lunch.
okay,
Yeah.
Oh,
but before arrival, should we pack all the necessary meals in advance?
You should
Matt, I think
do.
that depends where they're staying. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that one of the things we do want to emphasize to make sure there's no confusion is that all expeditioners are responsible for arranging their own accommodations, their own
mhm.
meals, and their own transportation. And the reason we do that, as Matt pointed out earlier, is we just don't have the staffing, particularly with grant
Yeah.
cuts from the current government, administration, that to allow us to have enough staff to provide transportation or to make meals, and it would make the cost so that it would be
Prohibitive.
unaffordable. And
Yeah.
so, those are decisions that you have to make based on where you make housing arrangements, I think.
Of course, makes sense.
Cold cuts and bread and
Oh,
chips
um,
and crackers and cheese and
Hmm.
things that has never on. And instant packets of what do you call it, oatmeal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and boil up some water, have maple sick uh, hard boiled eggs and toast in the morning, and water bottles that you can freeze and bring out to the field in your backpack with your sandwich and chips. Will you provide gloves? Should we bring our own like gardening
I
gloves or
would say bring gloves you'd feel comfortable wearing. We also do have gloves as well.
okay, good.
Alicia, you had a question.
well, when we were talking about the coolers and stuff, sometimes whenever I go on an expedition with my college, or whenever they host expeditions and I go to volunteer, sometimes what I do though is just buy up a lot of those Smucker's sandwiches, the PB&J kind,
Hmm.
and those little pouches of cookies and chips as
Yep.
well, and then just bring those to the site.
Mhm.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. So, well, I want to be respectful of your all's time because it's 1:04. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. We've had all kinds of questions in the past, and we'll be able to help you all out.
I
So,
have a silly question. When Madison got his 3,000 acres, who did he buy it from?
that would have
The
been
natives owned the land. Did
that
they
would have been
sell it to
obtained
him?
by his grandparents and from the James Taylor, who was the father of his grandmother,
Hmm.
Frances Taylor Madison. So, and it was acquired from the crown. So in the 1720s, and then later on, there was other land that was purchased. But there's the
So the
archaeology
crown
in my
stole it to begin with.
it was out, yeah, it was
Crown
bestowed from
confiscated
family
it from
connections.
indigenous. And then they bought it from King of England.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
So
stolen land and stolen people. Got it. Oh,
yeah,
we're gonna have
yep, that fine American traditions. So
yeah, that's
Yep.
exactly it.
uh,
When people say this is not the America I know, I always go, yes, it is.
yeah,
Exactly. It really
And
is.
blindness.
People
Hmm.
think that America is something bigger than what it actually is.
Thank you, Tess.
mm.
Thank you. They
Well,
whitewashed history.
Very much.
looking forward to meeting you all in a couple of weeks. And in the
Yes.
meanwhile, any questions, don't hesitate to contact us.
Okay, so
Yes.
you sent us an email with the asynchronous lessons. So over
Yeah,
the next week or so, we should get acquainted. Will there be a test? Should we take notes, or it's just for our own edification?
your own edification. So
Okay. And then you'll send us an email so we know the directions and where we're going. And other than
yeah,
that, what time should we be there on Sunday, the 10th?
It'll 6 o'clock, and Steve will have this in the email. So main thing
Okay.
is to look at your emails, and that has all the information. And we've always gotten people to where they need to be. This is not our first expedition, so but the main thing is look at your emails, and there's plenty of information there. So,
Okay.
but again, I want to respect everybody's time and where you need to go. So, but any questions, go ahead and give us a shout. So good seeing you all. Okay.
You too.
Bye.
All right.
Good
Bye,
evening,
everybody.
Bye.
2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.